DeFi Kingdoms, where you can summon heroes, trade with other players, quest, and fight challenging enemies in a fantasy world brought to life in pixel art animation. Command your legion, claim your legacy.
Hello everybody, and welcome to this week's AMA with DeFi Kingdoms. We may have one or two more people hop in and hop up on stage, but we are going to go ahead and get started with our two men of the hour, Frisky Fox and Hubert Cumberdale. So we're going to talk about Duels, and then we are going to dive into a lengthy list of questions submitted for Hubert. And then we do have, as almost always, a surprise guest at the end of this AMA. So make sure to stay tuned for all of the good stuff that we have coming at you for approximately the next hour. Let's kick it off and get rolling. Frisky Fox. I just saw your new little name title thing. I love it. So Duels got released.
It did, yeah. Let's talk about it. So long awaited, right? And I just want to start out by saying a huge shout out and thank you to everyone for your patience. It's been a lot of basically a lot of work to build this new season. There's been a lot of things that have been like refactored in the guts of it, so that in the future it'll be that much easier to launch these on a regular basis going forward, and it'll be just all in the same contract. So that's nice if you have anything that's like monitoring things on the blockchain, or in like our case, like we have things we have to whitelist and add roles to and things like that. All of that is now just a one-time thing. So that's really nice to have that set up like that. But yeah, there's as you know, there was a new mode that was launched. There was the pack with some of the new mechanics around that, and it's been really interesting to see all the thoughts around that. Also, we changed up the classes and the rotations. It was a surprise to a lot of people. I think everyone. I don't think we said anything about it, and good and bad. There were some lessons learned from that. I'll be talking about that in a bit. And let's see what else. We changed up the way that the background is calculated. Me and Hubert. Hubert had all the math and like everything like figured out, and was trying to explain it in a way that I could understand because he had a really good system, and he eventually brought me around to that and had that get coded. And so that now is set up such that previously if you boosted a background, because at the start of a duel you can select a individual background to be boosted, that would give a plus 20 or a 25% chance of that background being selected. Now, if both players selected the same background, there was some ambiguity about what that would do. And what it was actually doing in the past season was it would do a 41.6% chance of that one being selected. And so in this one, we actually changed it to be now a 50% chance if each player selects the same background. So that's been changed. The other thing is now we have crowns in the mix, and crowns also have their own little modifier there on the chances of some of the backgrounds being selected. So the gold crown does a plus 25% chance, and the silver does a plus 16, and the bronze does a plus 8.3 and 16.6 for the silver. And so that got sort of like redone in our code so that now if you have the gold crown, for example, and you selected a background, it would basically boost that background 25%. And if the hero's background is the same as that one, then it would get an extra 25% for that one. So it'd be a 50% chance on that one. So that was another thing that sort of changed a little bit thematically, and from a lore standpoint, it made a lot more sense to us to have that 25 extra boost there be for the background of the person wearing the crown, because it's their background. So that's actually how that works now, is basically if that hero wearing the crown is in the mountains, then it'll be the mountains for that specific like round of that combat that would get that extra boost. So theoretically, if all the stars align and each player selected the same background, and that hero is in that background and has a crown on, it'd be a 75% chance that it would get rolled, which is awesome. So that's kind of how that worked. And if anyone has more questions about that, I'm happy to go over that. There was also a bug with the crowns for like a day that just got fixed. And that was that the +3 to X bonus, which is supposed to always be on, actually wasn't always on. So that's now been fixed that it is on now. And the other 2 bonuses for crowns only apply when a hero is defending their champion title. So those are some of the main updates I had. I know there was a lot of things asked. So Bolon, I know I asked you if you could sort of like feed those to me one at a time, all of the questions.
Yes. All right, let's get it going. Number 1, why did we change up the class boosts?
Right. Yeah. Okay. So Mr. Zipper was like, "Hey, you should go read the Duels channel since last night," because I went to bed, and I was like, "Oh, that's fun, right?" So I like went in there and looked at it, and there's a lot of people asking like, "Why this change? You know, like why was it done?" It really breaks our teams, basically. It makes it so that it's harder for us to create really good teams that have good like synergy. We didn't have enough time to plan for it, and just all these things. And so, you know, this is a thing that was intentional, not trying to like make everyone mad, obviously. But I think that when you look at a season of a game, all of the games I've played that have seasons, the whole point of seasons is to create a new and interesting meta for each season. Like you don't want to get into a situation where you have the best meta and that will always be the best for all of the foreseeable future for each new season, because in my opinion, that gets boring. You know, like you want to have a new challenge, something new and interesting each time. And also for those players that aren't able to get those best teams, I mean, there is a limited amount of heroes in our ecosystem, and you know, a lot of the really good teams get snatched up for that season. But then other teams that could be good in future seasons might sort of be slept on a little bit. So it's interesting to me to mix that up in between seasons and to do it. And for a while, I was thinking, you know what? Why don't we mix up the class boosts such that every 12 hours you get something totally random? And pretty quickly I said, you know what, I don't actually like that very much because it makes it very hard to plan for a team for the season. And I think what we should do is limit those kinds of changes to an individual season and say, here's the meta for this season, create a team, create a build around it, and see how you can do. And that sort of helps to mix it up and have it stay fresh. And it does mean that your stuff that you have built for the previous season probably won't be the best one in this next season, and you'll have to mix it up. Is it unfortunate for somebody who had the best team in the last season? I think it could be, but is it good for the game as a whole? Is it more exciting? And is it like really good for the economy and like all that type of stuff of the game to have those things always be sort of like rotating? I think it is. And so that's kind of the intent we had. Obviously we'll be sort of like monitoring this to see how it goes, and obviously like making changes as is needed. But you know, that's the intent of it. We'll see how it goes. I'll also just note that for the last rotation, which I think was actually in there for maybe a couple seasons, it wasn't necessarily some kind of like master crafted, like these classes work together really well, so we're going to put them into the same rotation. It was more just random. And a lot of people went and they built teams around that. And they said, hey, this actually works really well for this type of a team. But it doesn't mean that that setup was meant to be like, this is the best way to build teams. It's just more of like, here's a way to do it that we started with, and we'll see what other ways there are in the future as well. So I just want to ask for, I guess, like some patience around that. The intent is to have like new and fresh, exciting metas for each upcoming season, and we'll obviously be like monitoring that. And yeah, I think there was a follow-up on that one too, Bolon, right?
Yes. Essentially, just was it intentional that they were not announced prior?
Yeah. Okay. So, yes, it was in a way. It's like one of those things. Every time we've launched Duels, there's been some things we've announced ahead of time. There's been other things we haven't, and there's always been kind of like a surprise each time. With us being in a more feature complete mode at this point, where we would like them to be more regular, I think it's fair to say that we should announce these things earlier. And we should be able to give like a heads up well in advance of what the start date is of this upcoming Duels Season 8, which actually I can say right now. Hey, I have a thumbs up now. That's fun. And that would be July 3rd, I believe, which is 2 weeks after Season 7 ends. That's basically able to be scheduled ahead of time. And the class rotation, I will also look into announcing that as soon as possible. I can't do it yet because it hasn't been settled on yet. But I would like to have that set up such that that gets planned pretty far in advance and can be announced like ASAP, even halfway through the previous season. I think should be fine, in my opinion. So that's the intent, and that's what I'd like to do going forward, so that players can start to plan and start to say, okay, for this season, it's like all of these teams that are the current meta, but for next season, these teams are going to be the meta. So I think being able to plan for that is important. What was the next one, Bullen?
1v1 changes
1v1.
to solo.
Yeah, so as a lot of you know, we did get rid of the ranked ladder for the 1v1 type. It's still there for like private matches and for some of the new things we added with like keepsies and deathmatch, but it was basically rotated out in favor of the new pack one, which is now in there as its own like ranked ladder. So the idea there really is just that, we wanted to have a new type of duel with the 5v5 where we're able to introduce entirely new mechanics, and having 4 types that are ranked just felt like too much. It was a lot of items that are basically being released into the ecosystem. There's the inflation factor. It's also just, like that much easier to abuse the 1v1, whether it's via like multi-accounting or like whatever. It's just very easy to farm. Not a lot of effort required into that either. Like the class boosts thing is almost not even really a factor because you don't have to really build a team at all for it. So it just, in my opinion, it wasn't our best type of duel. So that was why we decided just to have it no longer be a like ranked match type and instead have the 5v5 and see how that goes. So obviously we'll be like monitoring that to see how everything goes and seeing if there's anything that we want to change in the future. But I'm optimistic that this will be a really good change for us too, because having 3 heroes versus 1 hero in order to participate kind of like is able to bring it in line with other areas of our game, like existing combat where you have to have 3 heroes. Also, it's not too hard to get 3 heroes. I think the floor price is, I don't know, under 50 cents for heroes. So the idea there is that the cost of it will be the same as it was in terms of like the power tokens and like the gold and all that. So like the costs and the rewards are the same. Really, it's just the heroes that are required for the lowest one has been increased. And the reason why is because we want you to build a team and have some extra strategy and like planning there around how to build your team. What was the next one, Bullen?
Will the new mechanics from pack be expanded to other modes in the future?
No. The plan was to sort of have an area where not all of the modes are the same. So like if you have a team that works really well for one, that it would also work really well for all the others. That wasn't necessarily the intent of that. So having another one that's kind of like, this is a completely different thing, and you probably would need to build a different kind of team to actually do well in that thing. That was the intent. But if it was expanded to them all, then that would kind of like negate that. We do want it to be like that one is sort of separate and sort of like different, basically.
Very nice. As far as the ability to hit Mythic in a pretty condensed time frame, is it intended, and what can be done in regards to that?
Yeah, so we saw that a couple seasons ago when we introduced the ability to like recharge how many times your heroes can duel. That it basically made it so that you could hit really high like ranks really quickly. And actually for last season, we introduced a thing where you weren't able to do as many recharges at the start to sort of try to slow that down. This time we didn't do that. But I think for next season, we might consider bringing it back because it's just more interesting, in my opinion, to have that kind of thing in place. It's always a race to see like who can hit the highest rank first, and it's exciting and fun. But we also want to make sure that since this game is sort of like a worldwide audience, if you're in a certain time zone when it launches, you might have an advantage. But if are able to slow that down, where over a 24-hour period, you're only able to go so far with the individual team, I think that's healthy. And then as we get more and more people in the mix, then it starts to sort of like not really matter as much. So that's what I would consider doing for the future seasons.
Let's see. Flooding matchmaking. So if someone floods matchmaking with bad teams on alt accounts to try to win more easily and climb the ladders faster, is that easier now that there is a penalty for having multiple of the same hero in pack only?
Yeah. So we've seen this early on like season 2 or 3, that a strategy was to just have like an alt account that would stick in a bunch of like really bad teams and then make it easier for you to win against them. The ELO system is set up such that if you have a team that's just really bad, but your score is not very high because you just have a bad team, that you're not going to get matched with other higher ranked teams anyways. And if you did, you wouldn't be giving them hardly any points because of that ELO setup there. So that's one thing. The other thing is if you have just an intentionally really bad team, there's a thing built into Duels that if a team loses 3 times in a row, it gets pulled out of the rotation. So that would happen pretty quickly for a bad team and ultimately wouldn't impact a lot. So it's hard to make that work. I haven't seen it being abused. I don't think we'll see it this time either because all of those things are still in place.
Awesome. And one last question is, for champions, will the crowns be the same crowns from season 6?
Yes. So the crowns are set up to be sort of the same thing across all of our seasons. But we're still discussing what that means for past seasons and their like utility in future seasons. There has been talk of like, how can we make it so that there's not just eventually everyone has a crown and is like using them. And we have a lot of ideas, some of which, and obviously these are still just working ideas and can be changed, but we've basically talked about having it have some kind of like a durability where if you're using things from really old seasons, maybe it's harder to use them because you'll have more like wear and tear on them or something. So that's one idea we've talked about. There are others, but we haven't really decided yet what we want to do there, but I would be surprised if we didn't do something there. So the benefits should be the same. And if you're using the ones from the current season or from the last season, in the case of crowns, that would be the best ones to use. So that's the intent of that.
Awesome. I believe that wraps up our Duels questions / section. Anything you want to add?
No, I think, well, I guess yes, I say no, but yes. I just want to say thank you to our players. Just like the fact that there's so many people that spend a lot of time strategizing and trying to create teams and like have like the best ability to compete there. Like it's really awesome to see, and that's the reason why we build it, is because we want it to be played and enjoyed and having it be fun. And so I do listen to all of the feedback, and it is what influences all these changes that we make each time. And I guess after this, also there's like still some in our Discord channel for Duels. There's been a pretty good discussion there. I haven't read it all yet because I've been trying to fix some things, and also I spent like 2 hours this morning kind of reading it, or not 2 hours straight, but off and on and sort of reading it. And I got through up to like 8 a.m. this morning. So I'm almost there. But after this, I'm going to go hop into that channel. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to @me and I'll answer them there. So sort of a offline AMA in that channel for me if anyone has anything they'd like to say or any suggestions.
Awesome. I do appreciate it, sir. Thank you much. Moving from Duels, we will be momentarily kicking off a pretty lengthy section of Hubert questions. But first, welcome back, Hubert, and everybody who's listening to this AMA, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, whether you're listening live or later, just out loud, say congratulations to Hubert. Also see if you get looks for being, talking to yourself in public potentially, but also throw it in the chat. Welcome back, Hubert. We're very glad to have you. Anything you want to say before we kick off these questions?
Hey guys, I'm back, and I probably sound tired because I am. But thanks all for the congratulations and whatnot. The Hubert Jr. was born on early April, and really easy to remember birthday, 4/4/24. But yeah, he's healthy. He's crying a lot, and he's very uncooperative yesterday, and he slept like 17 hours the day before and only 10 hours yesterday. So it was a fun little adventure, but every single day it's I find myself like, oh, he's sleeping, I'm gonna go look at him for a second, just to see what the little creature is doing at the moment. And it's kind of a crazy thing to have a kid. I'm a bit older, so it's been a long time coming, I think, but I'm excited for the future with him. I'm looking forward to getting past this initial phase of him just being a little crying poop monster, but at the same time he's also extremely cute, and I know that as life progresses there's just going to be different phases of it and everything. So it's going to be a cool new journey. But at the same time, I'm also excited to be back. It's going to be a little bit of a transition for me, as I do have, a new source of need for my time. So I'm going to try to work out the dynamics of that. But at the same time, still, I've been back since Monday, and there's been, a lot of work being done towards the next class that we're going to be releasing. Now it was previously the next class, but now is the next class. And it seems like that's moving along very quickly, and so I'm excited for that. And then also just our PvP efforts as well, making progress there too. So there's just a lot of cool things going on, a lot of things on the horizon. I guess I'll also note, because I saw some people asking about expeditions, that we also have a working expedition contract that is in testing now. It's not all the way complete by any means, but it is at least in a state where we can be like hooking it up with our front end and stuff. So really good progress being made there. Yeah, just a lot going on. But we're always building and moving forward, and even when I'm away for a little bit, that doesn't stop us from moving forward with everything. But now that I'm back, I'm going to continue to contribute in the way that I do, and happy to start answering all these questions you guys have been saving up for me.
Yes. Yeah. Workhorse did help you out a little bit last week and take on some of the questions that we'd been saving for you. However, we may have also teased Matty Pesk a little bit, which has inspired him to submit a great many questions. So we're going to dive into those. But first, for those of you that don't know Matty Pesk, I just wanted to give a little bit of an intro for him.
The team's recent announcement that Seer is going to be the next class, and after conferring with my family, I feel the need that I need to make a public statement. As many of you are aware, I chose the Pirate to be the next class coming out, and I was incorrect. I would like to apologize to all the fans and viewers of Blogside Chats. I want to apologize to the team, the DFK team, specifically Bolon. But finally, I really want to apologize to my co-hosts, Guy Kid and Franz. I really feel like I let them down the most, and they're the ones I care about the most. So I will not be taking questions at this time, and I appreciate everyone's privacy in this matter. Well, me and my family deal with this tough time. Thank you.
All right. So for those of you that don't know Matty Pesk, that is a beautiful intro for him. Love you, Matty. I don't know what the payback will be, but I expect it to happen, and I'm okay with that. But let's dive into some of Matty's questions. So, looking for further clarification on the .s formula. It's based, as Matty knows, it is based on the specific stat of that hero as compared to all heroes of that class at all levels, and then averages across that. However, does the challenge ranking or challenge rating, sorry, of the current fight affect that score in any way?
Yeah, so I guess a few clarifications about that because it was not quite correct. So the stat scores, the way those work is it looks at the stats of all classes, or it was designed looking at the stats of all classes and kind of created a range of what is a good number for this level versus a bad number for this level across all classes for every stat. So like, for example, like mages have very low strength, so they were kind of used as like the low end on the strength score, and then like Dark Knight or others that have really high strength were used as like the model for like this is very high strength, and kind of creating an equation that will kind of bound those ranges within like saying, you know, if you have low score, you're gonna like your strength score is like 2% or 3%. Whereas if you're on the high end, it's 10% or higher, kind of depending on like how high you go, and kind of just creating a normalized like your strength for your level is this good, or your dexterity or whatever. So that it's not looking it doesn't vary per class. It's you know the same level hero that's a different class that has the same dexterity as a different hero that's a different class. It's going to be the same strength or like dexterity score. So that's kind of the theory behind how that was set up. It does vary based on like I guess when you say the challenge level, I assume you mean just like the level of the fight. Like
Yes.
if your opponents are level 15 and you're, it's like the strength score is, or all the scores are based off of the average level of the fight. So that looks at all of the opponents and all of your heroes, and whatever that average level is going to determine what everyone's scores are going to be on all of their stats. It also impacts speed and other things like recovery chance, block chance. Everything is dynamic in that way, where it's meant to be kind of bounded in that way. So in the future when we have our the easier what we've referred to as scrub fights out, that's going to have non-scaling enemies in it. So you could go in and fight like a bunch of level 3s with like a level 10 team. So the average level is going to be somewhere, like 5, 6, 7, 8, somewhere in there, depending on what the true balance of things are. Which means you're going to have an advantage against those guys. I mean, they're already pretty screwed by being level 3, but you're going to even have a further advantage there, but not so much. Like without having the strength, the scoring system in place and this dynamic stat system in place, I think it really became untenable, like to build a balanced combat engine. It was really kind of necessary as far as I'm concerned. And we may tweak some of the bounds of some of the numbers in the future if we find that something is just can get a little too extreme or not extreme enough. But try to find a good balance, and I think it's worked out pretty well so far. But yeah, so that's kind of how that works. I think you'll also see it in like PvP as well. If you try challenging people with like different level heroes, you can kind of experiment with how that works and see how like the scores are going to kind of change. Because yeah, like if you go like if the average level 7 and you're level 10, your stats are going to be above average in most cases. So your scores are going to be much higher. And, being like level 3 on the opposite end, your your stats relative to like level 7 stats are going to be so much lower. So your scores are going to be much lower there too. So that's kind of how that all works. And the equations are posted in a sheet on the Void Hunt channel. If you look in the pinned, you can look at those, how they're set up. It's very mathy, and but I mean that's what it is, and I think it's in a pretty good spot. So anyway, that's kind of a long talk about that, but hopefully that helps kind of explain how that all works.
Thank you, sir. Next question for you. The hero trait Speed currently uses First Strike, which I don't remember what these do. I'm sure you do, but going from the question, only worked on the old turn system that has been updated with the time bar. Any plans for the Speed trait rework and thoughts on it being replaced with a simple Gain X initiative?
Yeah, so far I think we have removed any instance of First Strike, that keyword, from anything that has been released. And if it still exists, then yeah, I do think it's generally going to be either just maybe phased out entirely as a keyword, or if we do still keep it, which I don't really see it as being something that makes sense anymore. But if we do, it would be like what you said, something where it's just basically a gain initiative. But we could just say gain initiative in skill descriptions without needing a special keyword for that. So it may just end up being phased out.
Awesome. Real quick follow-up to the first question. Will .s be used the same in PvP as it is in PvE?
Yeah, so I mean, it really it's just meant for the combat engine in general, like how that works. So if you're doing PvP and you're using different leveled heroes against each other, then it's gonna the scores are going to be based off of the average level of that fight. So that's just how it's always going to work for everything in the combat engine.
Perfect. Can wards stack?
I'd have to double check. I think at the moment I don't know that we put any rules in there that allowed them to, or only allowed one to exist at a time. Right now there are 3 different possible types of wards. There are magical wards, physical wards, and pure wards. Though at the moment the only one that exists is a single magical ward that the seer can cast. But so I think it would be possible to have all 3 of those types available at a time. I'm not sure if we set it up so that you can have 2 of the same type on at a time. That could cause kind of complications, but that's just recently introduced and only one source of it at the moment, so we haven't really run into weird interactions yet. But it's possible we might not allow the same type of ward to stack. I'm not sure at the moment how it is set up though.
Thank you. Are we worried that the current content, Hunt specifically, is a challenging boss fight and perhaps is a detriment to new users? I know scrub hunts are on the way, but how often are game design decisions, such as trying to get mass adoption, affecting how we decide what content comes out?
Yeah, good question. So I wouldn't say that I think the hunts are too hard. I think they provide the kind of challenge that we wanted to like make available to players to be able to do like while we continue to develop. I guess in my opinion, I think it was more important to have something that people can sink their teeth into and continue to sink their teeth into. That's kind of repeatable and doesn't get too you can do different things. You can use different heroes to keep it exciting. We've seen Mythic Squad do their tournament based on the boar hunts, which was also very cool. And I think if it was just just for the fact of the matter is we just have a lot of development that we need to do still, and having something where we have kind of on the high end where it's more challenge allows us to have an easier time balance testing. Now that we are working on PvP, we also have a new lever where we can do balance testing against other heroes, which is also very nice. And then that I think also kind of addresses the concern about mass adoption. I think at least for the near term, once we have that out, it provides players with a whole new avenue of gameplay that they can do, or they're engaging with, kind of similar level heroes. We are going to include all sorts of different customizations that people can do to kind of set what their opponents can use against them, and then they themselves also, like, not allowing for imbalanced setups, but giving players the option to play against each other, I think just opens up a whole new avenue of gameplay that we haven't seen yet. And so I'm hopeful that will kind of scratch that itch for new players and kind of give an easier barrier to entry than being able to go and do a hunt at the moment. And with that said as well, as I mentioned before, we do plan, and even the question mentioned this too, like scrub fights are coming, and that I see as kind of being like the meat and potatoes of what the PvE experience of the game will be, is being able to go out and fight various easier monsters and have a more straightforward experience with heroes, and not necessarily needing to be like very well tuned to be successful. But with that said, I also am a very strong proponent of having difficult fights in a game, and with high quality rewards coming from those. So I do plan on there being kind of a mix of those things moving forward as we continue to progress in our development.
Cool. Do we currently have statistics on which classes are used most often for the hunts globally, and is that something a third-party site could potentially find?
So I think a third-party site, the information they would need to figure that out is all on the blockchain, because they can see what heroes were submitted to the start events. But as far as like available for people to access, I don't think at the moment we have it set up right now for like the combat engine statistics to be accessible, though it is something that we've discussed. Just kind of a matter of like, do we want to prioritize getting that set up over other things? And so far that answer has been no. But I think eventually that would be something that I would like to kind of expose more openly, just so that third-party sites can do analytics and kind of it's always helpful to have other people doing analysis in what we're doing, because it means that we don't have to spend the time doing that analysis ourselves, and it can help illuminate things that maybe we're not aware of. So it is something that we've talked about, and I think we do want to do. And yeah, like I said, if someone wants to finesse the blockchain enough, all the information is available to tell you which classes are being used for hunts. If you just parse all of the start hunt events and what heroes were applied to those.
We do love analytics. Will there be a specific crafting skill to repair equipment, or is repairing durability going to be a separate process?
So repairing is going to be kind of separate. I do have thoughts towards like repairing specific things requiring specific professions to do so. But at least in the initial iteration of repairing, it's going to be something that's done through NPCs, just so that we can get that out sooner. So I guess that's what you can kind of expect. But it's, as far as like things when it comes to crafting, there's just hasn't been a whole lot of like firm decisions made yet. So I think there's a lot that's subject to change and to speculation at the moment.
Awesome. Updating traits. Many of the traits currently have rounds as the duration. Assumably, this will be updated to work with the time bar system. Is it safe to assume it will be a certain number of ticks/initiative to correspond to the rounds?
Yeah, I'd say so. I think even in that question, it had an example that was pretty spot on. Like typically 10 ticks is about, like, 10 ticks is exactly the amount of time it takes for 1,000 initiative to be generated by somebody with 100 speed. So like one tick is 100 initiative by 100 speed hero. It's kind of like, if you want to think about that, and I know that might get people in that confused math gif that everyone likes to use mode, but that's kind of the standard speed for things. So yeah, typically if we say something would lasted for a round, we could say last for 10 ticks, and that's about that. Though it means something that's like super fast speed maybe with a bunch of different buffs and a swiftness potion, could potentially get 2 instances of that effect if they're going quick enough. But or like if they're going too slow, they may not even get to see the benefit at all as well, I guess. It kind of depends on what the benefit is, if it's something that is like an attack buff versus something that's more passive, like a defensive buff. But yeah, anyway, sorry, tangents. That's generally yes.
Have we released the formulas for basic attack and spell attack, as well as which stats affect them? And is it separate from the guild weapon stats Excel document that you have shared before?
Yeah, I mean, the formula is basic. I mean, it always depends on the weapon. So like whatever the weapon uses for its scaling, that's going to determine which stats contribute to your attack or your spell. And that is listed on the equipment when you if you look at a gore blade, I believe that scales off of both strength and dex, and it has like a base attack and a base spell tied to it as well. So the formula is always just your weapon's base plus the whatever scalar stat multiplier, plus the stat times whatever scalar the weapon has for that stat, plus for every scalar it can have. And there can be up to 3 stats that will contribute to your attack or your spell. But yeah, that's all kind of visible there. There is something that we're kind of missing in the game at the moment that we do plan to have eventually, which is kind of a contextual view of your attack and spell based on if you're going to equip something to a specific hero, rather than kind of showing the full range that's available for a weapon, showing what it will be for your hero at that moment. That's something we do plan to do. It just isn't there yet. But I think once that's there, it'll be a little bit more clear about what your attack and your spell will be with that. So and eventually also we're going to be getting rid of the guild equipment anyway, so that'll kind of be just the general thing, is that you can see what your attack and spell will be with everything that you're equipping. So yeah.
Speaking of guild weapons, the guild equipment have various effects, like the warrior's mace having the chance to daze and the thief's dagger having a chance to bleed. Are those effects true of all of the weapons of that type, or are they specific to that guild equipment? So do all maces cause daze?
So that daze bonus is it's still considered a bonus as far as that goes, and weapons have 4 different bonus slots. So I wouldn't commit to saying every single daze is going to, or daze, every single mace is going to have 5% daze. I think in general, thematically, we do want to kind of have a sort of flavor for specific weapons. So I think daze on maces is going to be a very common thing. I would say that it's possible that it might not always be there. There could be some maces that do stun instead, and there could be some that are special that don't do either of those things. And it's kind of up to us as designers to decide how we want to do that.
Awesome. In the Seer Codex, the term raw damage is seen. Does this have a specific definition, or is it simply the term for regular damage?
Yeah, so we've kind of gone back and forth on some of the wording that we use in our descriptions, and raw damage was kind of a newer one, and it's one that's probably going to go away because it seemed to cause confusion. The intent behind it was just to say, we didn't want people to think that, oh, this says it's going to do 80 damage. Why did it do only 65 when I did my attack? There's the damage that goes into the beginning of defense calculations, and that's what we meant by raw damage. And then there's the final damage that comes after defense is applied and everything else. And that's the actual damage. So, it's kind of a question of would it be confusing if we didn't distinguish it that way and we just said damage instead? I kind of have come to the opinion that people will understand that, and that the raw doesn't necessarily contribute to the clarity. So I think we are probably going to just remove that term from everywhere. And with that said, though, I will also say we're adding a new one called pure damage, which is damage that is applied and ignores all defensive things. It's just the damage is that, and it doesn't vary. So that is something that we're going to start seeing in the future.
All right. I appreciate it. I'm going to give you a break. We're going to snag one last question, which I think will actually go to a Fox that's up here on the audience. And then we're going to bring up our special guest for the week. So Hubert gets to take a breather for a minute, and don't worry, we have more for you next week, Hubert. But in the meantime, voting, I guess, really just in general, in terms of governance voting, we've mentioned that we are working on getting a system in place that supports the Halliday wallets. But now that Duels is out, thoughts on getting the voting system up and running?
Yeah, no, thanks for the heads up too, because I was over in the Duels channel answering some questions. But yeah, I actually spent some time on this, like, when was it? A couple months ago. Because, as it is currently, our Holiday wallets don't have all of the same abilities as someone who's just using MetaMask in terms of our voting, and that's because snapshot.org doesn't work with anything besides MetaMask. So snapshot.org actually has something that they've built experimentally that is supposed to allow I'm blanking right now on the standard ERP 4337 maybe. If Magnus was here, he would know.
EIP 4337, I think.
Okay. Yeah. So that's the standard of sort of the smart contract accounts, and Halliday calls them smart accounts. And so the idea though is that with MetaMask, since it's a EOA, and oh crap, I don't even remember what the acronym stands for, but basically, since it has its own private keys, it can actually generate a sort of a hash or a signed message for anything out there. And then it's easy for a third-party protocol to prove that you signed that because they have your public key. For smart accounts, it's different because there aren't actually any private keys. So it's sort of a whole new paradigm. So to make that work, they actually can build a callback that's sort of an interface that would basically allow you to say, hey, just letting you know in advance that I'm going to say that if anyone asks about this message, say that I did sign it. So basically only you can submit that, so then it's a secure way for you to say that you actually did sign that message. So I spoke with Griffin from Halliday. He's a great guy, really smart. And he was excited about that too. He said, yeah, I'm sure that we could implement that standard and that interface with our smart accounts. So he got to work on that, and he implemented that in a beta version. And that trying to get that to work with Snapshot has been problematic because Snapshot also implemented a thing now where any new chains have to pay crap, I can't remember what it was, but maybe a couple thousand a month or something to be integrated. So I think our existing one is kind of grandfathered in for now. I'm not sure how long that will last. There hasn't been a lot of info about that, but the idea is that with that change that was made there, that should allow Halliday accounts to now be able to vote using snapshot.org. So that would be exciting. We're still trying to figure out the best way to test that, though. It hasn't been rolled out to production. But assuming that that works, there is a way forward with snapshot.org. The other cool thing was 2 months ago, as I earlier mentioned, snapshot.org has their own API and also a React-based SDK. So I was able to actually integrate our stuff over there with our interface. So basically all of the votes that are on snapshot.org could actually show up inside of our interface, and players would be able to sort of in real time see all the votes and be able to vote on those from inside of our game. And I think that's awesome because it's going to basically give a lot more visibility to our votes and have more participation. And there's also been some talk internally of how can we change up some of the weighting of our votes to be more fair, especially in terms of how heroes are treated. And we haven't really made any decisions there yet, but it's something we've talked about. We might even do a vote about that in the future. But right now the priority is trying to get the voting up again so that everybody who has our assets can participate in that. So that it is high on our priority list, and Duels is out, so I have a little bit more time. I'm switching over, and I have actually switched over to doing PvP as my main thing, and also Mythic Swap on the back end as well, or like on like the back burner as I have time for that as well. There's a few things there that I have to do so that the front end people that are actively working on that can be unblocked on some of those things. So in terms of priority, I'm going to try to squeeze it in. But for sure, the PvP stuff is still my main priority. And basically, it's just being able to squeeze it in between those things.
Awesome. Thank you much, Sir Fox. Greatly appreciate that. Speaking of communities and fun things that we do with communities, we have some friends here to join us today from Big Red. So we have Naho and Armando here with us from Big Red. As you all, I would imagine, know by now, but if you don't, you're going to find out right now. There are 2 Big Red sponsorships going on right now in DFK. The first one is a Hunts raffle. It's running for a total of 80 days. They are giving $25 worth of TD, the Big Red token, to 5 winners every day. The winners of that raffle every day will be airdropped a representative token, which they will burn upon claiming to provide their OX address. And then every couple weeks, we will get all of that TD sent out to those winners on Avalanche C Chain. The second one is a Visage. So that Visage actually went live last Friday, the Big Red head. So if you're looking at these awesome teddy bears up here, it is the head of the bear as a Visage. And those, similar to the Karate Combat Gi, at the end of the 30 days that they are available, every purchase will receive an equal share of $15,000 worth of TD tokens. So kind of get a rebate of sorts from your purchases of the Big Red head. But hello, Naho and Armando. Fran was here for a second, but he just disappeared again. Pop him back up if he pops back in.
No
How are
worries.
y'all?
Doing great, man. How are you?
Doing well, doing well. Glad to have y'all here with us.
Well, thank you much. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Hello.
Hey guys, Bolin, I'll hop into on the intro.
Yeah.
Super stoked about this partnership. As we look at what's happening in Avalanche, which Avalanche is really one of our core partners, over 2 years building there. They've really tried to stay focused on what's hot. Memes have been hot. They provided a number of unique solutions for memes and community tokens to flock to that chain. And we've seen a lot of quality stuff there, one of which is Big Red. These guys are doing something totally different, looking at Cornell, which played a big part in like the leadership's foundation and launch of Avalanche and all of the professionalism they bring to the space. And celebrating, their main mascot, which is Big Red. They have a lot of things tied to the community there at the university and trying to get tied into the Avalanche Web3 community. They felt very strongly the largest and oldest game on Avalanche. DeFi Kingdoms would be a great way to work together. I met a couple of the core team in person as well. Great people doing a lot of things in the space. So we're excited when, as mentioned before, $25,000 across Hunts and this Visage. One thing to note before we pass it over, that Visage is similar to the Karate Combat Gi, but dissimilar in that it's a fixed dollar amount, not a fixed token amount. So Bolon said it, I've said it, hopefully that sinks in. Do the math, look at the blockchain, see how many have been sold, try to look at that overall delivery at the end. And also look how cool it appears in the game. Once these are all minted, there's no more minted. They are sold in the secondary market, but really awesome rebate, the largest we've ever had, and hope people can contribute. So I'll pause there. Stoked for you guys to be on. Anything you want to add on the overview of Big Red as a project, and not only a meme coin, but as a community token?
I wasn't sure if you were talking to me. I was having a little bit of a hard time hearing you, but no, thanks for your kind words. I mean, yeah, we launched on AVAX, when was that? On March 14th. As a community token, as like a meme token, so to speak. However, we are also building a whole ecosystem in the background as well, and just kind of connecting with communities across AVAX and in the entire space. And what you guys have built, lots of respect and big shout out to you guys. I mean, you've been here for some time. You've established yourself in DeFi Kingdoms, and we're just honored to have the opportunity to work with you guys. So thanks for having us.
Maybe Bolon, I'll rely on you. Am I hard to hear? Is my mic bad or something?
No, you sound good.
Oh,
no,
okay.
no, it's probably just me. I'm in New York City, so we are here. We're going to the Cornell blockchain event that's going to be here on Friday. And, since we have a partnership with the Cornell University Entrepreneurship Program, we're going to be there. And then on Saturday, actually, if anybody is in the New York City area or just in the East Coast and would like to come meet us or say hi or anything, we're going to have a small side event just at a spot. We're going to have some drinks, some food, just kind of like, get to know people, sort of like a meet and greet type deal. So, if anybody is in the area, feel free. But yeah,
so we should all fly into the area and run up that bill. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely, man. I would love to have you, Dreamer. Why not?
Cool. Well, so one thing we do on the AMA and internal meetings as well is at the end, one lucky person does yell bullish, just signifying bullish regardless of what markets are doing, prices and so on. We're building, we have long-term focus, we're adding partnerships. So with you guys here, don't want to cut you short if you have anything else you want to highlight and go over, but we're very grateful that we have so much being contributed on the hunt side, on the Visage side. For those that are getting TD, you will be able to get that right on C Chain. Look into the community. It's a great community. And if you're meeting with Cornell, and I could see some pretty cool things happening with education and so on, where DeFi Kingdoms could be a great way to integrate into whatever you do with Cornell on the education side for DeFi, for gaming, for NFTs, and so on. So, we'll look to see what we can do in terms of collaboration and our overall communities. But for now, it's a really fun promotion. We appreciate you guys. Those playing hunts, hopefully you appreciate it. Those that like the cosmetics, hopefully you appreciate the added boost. And if there's anything else to say, please share. And then in a few minutes, we shall ask you to give us, in whatever way you feel most enthusiastic, a good bullish. We'll join you in that and close out the AMA.
All right. So yeah, no, absolutely. We and I saw some of the graphics and stuff in the game with the big red visage and everything. So looks super cool, man. I love it. And as you mentioned, I mean, on the educational aspect of things, we're also working in that regard. We're gonna have what we call the Avalanche of education. We're gonna be talking about all kinds of stuff. Yeah, no, I mean, we should definitely get together and discuss how we can, kind of collaborate on that, that hopefully will benefit both DeFi Kingdom and Big Red. So
for sure, I think one of the biggest, constructive criticisms about DeFi Kingdoms, which is in development, is for new players, relative to other Web3 games out there. There's either games that barely touch blockchains or those that do, maybe aren't as complex and just overly simple. I think the education for somebody to come in, they have to understand how RPGs work, how our mechanics work specifically. They need to understand marketplaces, Web3 wallets, and so on. We're constantly improving on our side, but it's definitely a much bigger effort and also issue. The gatekeep of true high quality, fun to play, well connected, good economy like blockchain gaming. It all hinges on onboarding, education, and cultivating that community. So stoked to have this start. Really interested in what you're doing on the education side, and we'll see what ways we can collaborate and benefit all involved going forward.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, it would be absolutely, I think, extremely good partnership, between and I mean, since we're already in somewhat of a partnership, and we appreciate your guys' support and in reciprocity, you know, however we can support you as well, you know, we're always here. So that's one of the things, like, in the space, Dreamer, as you know, like, there is so much stuff going on. It's kind of hard to you know, navigate at times between, like, you know, serious and like, you know, good projects with all, like, you know, the different scams and everything. And so networking is a big part of it, you know, and for us to and then, I mean, of course, you know, we're kind of new in the Avalanche space as well. So just to kind of, like, you know, have somebody like yourself to kind of even just kind of point us towards the right direction and that sort of thing has been massive. So like I said, I really appreciate all of that.
Awesome. Well, before you load up that bullish that will join you in, Bullon, did you have any closing comments or anything anybody you want to call on before we try to end, since we're already a few minutes over?
Nope. I'll just say I really appreciate everybody who's tuned in and will tune in later. As always, thank you to everybody who has asked questions, especially Matty Pesk. And keep submitting your questions, talk.defikingdoms.com or the AMA questions channel in Discord. Thank you, everybody, for being up here and taking some time to answer these questions. Our friends from Big Red greatly appreciate y'all stopping by and joining us today, and super excited about what we're already doing together and what we will continue to do together in the future. But yeah, unless anybody has any other comments, we can turn it over to Big Red for a closing.
I'll just say those visions are available. Hop over to Tavern. They should be live. The promotion is a one-time thing at the end. The hunt promotion that was mentioned is live as well. I don't remember exactly how many days are left, like 70 or something days left. That's 4 or 5. Is it 5 winners a day? Hold on, sorry, correct me.
Yeah, 5 winners a day, and it should be like 72 days left, I think, something like that. A lot. There's a lot of days left.
And since that's so many days, what we're doing, I think, is we're delivering in between, like, every 2 weeks or so. So get out there, check out the Visages. If you get them, you know, give the Big Red guys a follow, tag them, you know, share your opinion on how you like it or your replays. If you win a hunt, share your appreciation. And the more eyes on this and what we're doing and trying to integrate other communities and advertisement, fun to play, cosmetics, and so on, the better. So appreciate everybody's support. Over to Big Red guys to give us that fatty bullish.
Okay, just so we're on the same page, by this bullish, basically you just kind of want me to kind of give you a quick rundown of Big Red, or
you just say bullish. You say bullish. We all say bullish. High five and go on.
Oh, okay.
Guys. Yeah, we've
perfect.
been doing it for 2.5 years, every AMA and a lot of others. So it means a lot to us. You're a new person, so you're probably like, "What the heck's going on here?" But
no, that's all right.
It's a big honor to do it. We hope that we're excited that you're here. So it's our way to kind of welcome you in, and for everybody else to be excited that you're kind of taking part in our weekly tradition. So
real quick before you set off, I forgot. I apologize. Meant to mention one last thing. Shout out to the Jewelers. They have the Jewelers Joust getting ready to kick off, which is a duels tournament. Signups are live now and run through Saturday, and then I believe the tournament is next week, if I remember correctly. But check out Jewelers for more information if you're interested in a really cool duels tournament. Thank you. Sorry about that. Back over to you.
All right. Well, bullish. I don't know. Am I doing it right?
Bullish, bullish, bullish.
Bullish. Hell yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody,
Thanks,
and we
everyone.
will see you next week.
Thanks,
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
DeFi Kingdoms, where you can summon heroes, trade with other players, quest, and fight challenging enemies in a fantasy world brought to life in pixel art animation.